तिरस्कृत्य द्रष्टनास्त्य तिरस्कृत्य च दर्शनम् द्रष्टव्यं दर्शनं चैव द्रष्टर्यसति ते कुतः
draṣṭā nāsty a-tiras-kṛtya a-tiras-kṛtya च darśanam draṣṭavyaṃ darśanam caiva asati te kutaḥ. MMK chapter 3 verse 6. A seer, separately or inseparably from seeing, does not exist. As for what is to be seen and seeing, where there is no seer, how will those two be? So the gist of the first line is draṣṭā, a seer, nāsty, does not exist, or draṣṭā nāsty, there is no seer. Na, not, asati, there is, exists. So on what basis does he say that a seer does not exist? In light of the Buddha's teaching that both it exists, asati, and it does not exist, nāsty, or in other words, astita, it existness, and nāstītā, it does not existness. In Pali, there, atita and natita. Those are the two views, the two wrong views. It exists is śaśvata drishti, the view of eternity, the view that a self-existing thing exists. And if it's a self-existing thing, it's for keeps. It's not susceptible to change, so it's the eternity view. The opposite view is that a self-existing thing does not exist, in which case that's the view of cutting or annihilation that denies the reality of anything. So in the middle, having said that it exists is not true and it does not exist not true, the point is that a self-existing thing does not exist. So I do not exist as a self-existing thing, separately or inseparably from my environment. But that isn't to absolve me of responsibility for my actions. To that extent, I do exist. So what he's saying here is a seer does not exist in relation to seeing, darśanam. And that relation is expressed a-tiras-kṛtya, not apart from. So tiras means apart, and kṛtya means having been made. So a-tiras-kṛtya, literally not having been made apart. Tiras-kṛtya cha, and or having been made apart. So it means inseparably or separately. A seer, draṣṭā, separately, tiras-kṛtya cha, or inseparably, a-tiras-kṛtya. I should say separately, tiras-kṛtya, or inseparably, a-tiras-kṛtya. The cha is in the second pada. From seeing, darśanam. So tiras-kṛtya takes the accusative singular neuter, darśana is darśanam. Here translated seeing, does not exist, nāsty. Draṣṭā nāsty a-tiras-kṛtya a-tiras-kṛtya ch darśanam. A seer, separately or inseparably from seeing, does not exist. So, what it's saying is one who looks or sees, that's draṣṭā, one who looks or sees or realizes or meets, does not exist as a non-empty thing, does not exist as a looker who looks or a seer who sees, does not exist as the subject of a verb or the gainer of an end. And that sense, I think, is to the fore in verse 6 and verse 7, where we have the word draṣṭavyaṃ. So draṣṭavyaṃ means to be seen, to be looked at, to be realised, to get your dirty paws on, as Nelly Menor might put it. So draṣṭavyaṃ has implicit in it a sense of tempting us to go for it directly. If we conceive there's an end out there to be gained, or an object to be seen, or even an object to be looked at, that's a stimulus to end gaining. And that is made particularly explicit at the end of chapter 5, where we've got the phrase draṣṭavyaṃ, the cessation of the to be seen. And it mirrors in the dedicatory verses prapanch-upashamam, the cessation of prapancha, spinning things into self-existence. So that's the story of all our lives. We spin objects, we spin into self-existence objects that we'd like to gain. And then we go for them directly, causing all kinds of collateral damage along the way. And again, we've got gantavyaṃ at the end of chapter 2, the place to go and visit, the to be visited. I translate it as a place to go and visit. So it's the same thing. We want to visit. We've got our bucket list. That's a nice example of prapancha. All the places that we want to go and visit. Related to that, there's a chapter of Shobogen's, I think it's chapter 63, Hensan, which means thorough exploration. And it refers to a custom there was in the monasteries or in the practice of ancient Chinese Zen practitioners, where they would go around exploring temple to temple, see if they could find a teacher who could teach them. But Master Dogen's take on that was that real Hensan is sort of digging the earth where you're at, finding a teacher who could guide you in the right direction and just making your effort there and then, not looking for any particular special place. So the second line in that spirit, draṣṭavyaṃ darśanam caiva draṣṭary asati te kutaḥ. As for what is to be seen and seeing, so draṣṭavyaṃ, what is to be seen, nominative singular neuter, and darśanam, seeing, cha, and, plus eva, emphatic, or there to bring up give it an extra syllable, caiva, so and. As for what is to be seen and seeing, draṣṭavyaṃ darśanam caiva, draṣṭary asati, so draṣṭary is locative of draṣṭra, the seer, the looker, the one who realises. Asati is locative of asat, not being present. So it's a locative absolute phrase. Draṣṭary plus asati, draṣṭary asati. A seer not being present. In other words, where there is no seer. Te is nominative dual, those two. Kutaḥ, from where. So kutaḥ means from where, or how will they be. Draṣṭary asati te kutaḥ, how will those two be? How How will those two be? Te kutaḥ, where there is no seer, draṣṭary asati. As for what is to be seen and seeing, draṣṭavyaṃ darśanam caiva, where there is no seer, asati, how will those two be? Te kutaḥ. Draṣṭā nāsty a-tiras-kṛtya, a-tiras-kṛtya ca darśanam, draṣṭavyaṃ darśanam caiva, draṣṭary asati te kutaḥ. A seer, separately or inseparably from seeing, does not exist. As for what is to be seen and seeing, where there is no seer, how will those two be? So, relevant to this is Patrick MacDonald, the Alexander teacher Patrick MacDonald's teaching that when the right thing does itself in Alexander work, that means when a pupil kind of lifts out the chair seemingly without any effort, the thing's doing itself. And the teacher is moving, the pupil is allowing the teacher to move them in such a way that the head is coming out. My experience, I used to say, it was like a JCB was digging my head out from the depths of me, from my pelvis, from my feet. And that kind of real strong pull of the head out of the body is being achieved by hands which are barely touching at all. I mean, almost no contact. So something is coming through the hands. It's not the hands doing something to me. It's a direction being allowed through the hands. Totally impossible to put into words. But, you know, when it happens, there'll be a tendency for the pupil to look at the teacher in sort of astonishment. And if the teacher was Patrick MacDonald, he would say, well, he shouldn't have been away in the first place. So that would be a situation where a teacher had a hands on a student or a pupil. The teacher was amazed how easily he or she could bring the pupil out of the chair without doing anything with the hands, but just allowing something, especially if Patrick MacDonald had his hands on the teacher's hands guiding the process. And then the trainee teacher would look at MacDonald in astonishment, as if to say, how did that happen? And MacDonald would say, well, you shouldn't have been in the way in the first place. It's not like you've done something clever. It's just that before, when it wasn't working, there was a seer, one who was trying to get it, one who was trying to understand. So I've told the story many, many times, but it's a very profound experience. So Patrick MacDonald taught Nellie Ben-Orr to work like that, and then Nellie Ben-Orr taught me and my wife to work like that, or at least, and so she taught us. So she demonstrated how it was possible to work like that. So I would put my hands on my wife and think like, I don't want to be the seer. I don't want to be. Actually, now I mention that, it fits very well with the previous verse. So it says, looking does not see at all. Pashyati darśanam naiva. Not looking does not see at all. So in your effort to not be the end gainer, you could, with eyes as big as your face, you're trying to see to be mindful of what's going on, and Nelly will say, no, take that out of your hands. So you try to be the not looker, and some people, actually you do see this in Alexander work, some people will sort of look away in an attempt to not be the end game. They sort of detach themselves from the process, and instead of looking at the person they're supposed to be helping, they'll just look out the window and try that. And that doesn't work at all. So not looking does not see at all. Caiva pashyata darśanam. I think exactly that's the kind of thing he's talking about. So in our efforts to drop off body and mind. We are the seer. We're the one who wants, we're the seeker, the realizer. And what he's saying here is a seer or a realizer doesn't exist. So when there's real insight or real realization, the seer does not exist. And that's what Patrick MacDonald says, you shouldn't have been away in the first place. It's you are in the way by being the seer or the realizer or the one who was being mindful, being watchful. In the same spirit, again, an aphorism of Patrick MacDonald, if you're careful in this work, you'll never get anywhere. If you're careless, you might. So again, what do? We try to affect carelessness, insouciantly looking out the window instead of looking at the task in hand. So those are usual struggles in Alexander work, to practice non-doing. Then the second line, as for what is to be seen and seeing, where there is no seer, how will those two be? So a non-empty seer is inevitably implicated with the verb, the action seeing as a thing, as a non-empty thing unto itself, and an object to be seen, an end to be gained as a thing unto itself. Yeah, I made a little note. The final thing I wanted to say about the verse is that the emphasis, darśanam means looking and seeing. So it's unfortunate in English that you have to choose one, because if we're not careful, we emphasise the primacy of looking rather than being interested in gaining the end. And that's a kind of, there's a falseness in there, in the sense that eventually we do want to gain the end. We do want something to be realised. In the context of Alexander teaching, we do want the pupil to get out of the chair, but only in the process of letting the neck be free, to let the head go forward and up, to let the back lengthen and widen, sending the knees forward and away. So as far as darśanam means enlightenment, tattva darshanat, it's through realization of reality, through darśana of what is, through meeting what is, through what is being realized. That's how the wise one is not the doer. So we want that. But so the thing that's being denied is the attitude of a non-empty seer who wants to get his dirty paws on seeing, as if seeing was a non-empty thing, seeing in that case meaning enlightenment or realization. But it's not a negation of the act of seeing. It's not even a negation of the to be seen, an object to be seen. It's a negation of prapancha, spinning that object to be seen into existence as a non-empty thing. So if I look up there above the transparent plastic roof, there's hazel, stubs of hazel that were cut down last year, getting ready to grow in the spring. So I can vaguely see them through the roof. It's not that they don't exist as objects to be seen, it's that they don't exist separately as non-empty things. I'm labouring the point, but that's the point of this verse. So a seer does not exist as a non-empty thing, and that's why it says a-tiras-kṛtya darśanam, separately or inseparably from seeing. So there's the mistake. It's to connect a non-empty subject with non-empty object. Whether you say they're separate or inseparate. So if you say subject and object are inseparable, that's wrong, because you're suggesting there's a subject which exists and an object which exists, and subject and object are in fact inseparably one. See, it's getting there, but it's not quite true. And on that point, there's the words of Erwin Schrödinger. So I'll quote what he said. This is from Mike Latchford's attempt to get to the bottom of MMK in around the year 2000. Dear reader, recall the bright, joyful eyes with which your child beams upon you when you bring him a new toy. And then let the physicists tell you that in reality nothing emerges from these eyes. In reality, their only objectively detectable function is continually to be hit by and receive light quanta. In reality, a strange reality, something seems to be missing in it. So, definitely Schrödinger there, he's recognising the limitations of a scientific approach which sees reality as objectively out there. But if you are pedantic about this next paragraph, you can see the fault in it. The world is given to me only once, not one existing and one perceived. Subject and object are only one. The barrier between them cannot be said to have broken down as a result of recent experience in the physical sciences, for this barrier does not exist. So it's very close to what Nagarjuna is saying, but not quite, because subject and object are only one. That's what Nishijima Sensei used to tell me. And it's falsified by the way that Nagarjuna clarifies it, which is that there is no subject and no object. So both Schrödinger and my Zen teacher Nishijima Sensei were sort of pointing in the right direction by talking about subject and object are one. But words become flesh, and if you think that subject and object are one, you only need to look at the history. Look at the history of what happened, and you see are you on my side or not? You know, that's the sort of tragic outcome of thinking that there is self and others, subject and object. And I've been guilty of it as anybody. That's what the Buddha. That's why the Buddha said prapancha is the cause of human conflicts. So again, there's the also relevant is Master Dogen's teaching about polishing a tile versus making a mirror. So you can say that in the Soto sect, the emphasis is on polishing a tile, whereas in the Rinzai sect, they're more keen on getting enlightenment, which is like trying to make a mirror. But that again is a kind of taking sides. And if you read Master Dogen's teaching more deeply, you'll see that ultimately he's not on the side of polishing a tile against making a mirror. So it's the same as in the Alexander work. The emphasis is on the process, is on the method, so as to be able to make a good job of gaining an end. Non-end gaining does not mean not gaining ends. It means not going directly for the target, relying on faulty sensory appreciation, relying on bad coordination. It's actually very simple, but a very difficult principle to uphold, because we've evolved to end gain, to go directly for our targets. Or before that, we've evolved to prapancha, targets, to turn targets into things that we want to get our dirty paws on. And then when we've identified the target, we go directly for the target. That's what end gaining means. So non-end gaining doesn't mean that you don't gain the end. It means you don't go directly for the end. I say it's actually very simple, but tends not to be deeply understood. Again, I once described myself to Marjorie Barlow as a confirmed end gainer, and she wasn't having any of it. It was quite a memorable bit of teaching, because Marjorie wasn't generally the most severe of teachers, but she really took me up on that and said, listen, you decide. You go directly for the end, or you follow the means whereby. It's up to you, you know. So it was a very empty teaching, that of Marjorie. It's not that anybody's essentially, inevitably doomed to spend their whole life end gaining. We're all evolved to end gain. But what Alexander called man's supreme inheritance, the supreme inheritance of all human beings, is the ability to reason our way out of that slavery to end gaining. By the way, the version on bodhisvara.com begins with a-tiras-kṛtya. So it goes a-tiras-kṛtya, draṣṭā nāstya, a-tiras-kṛtya ca darśanam. So the sandhi between nāsty and a-tiras-kṛtya, nāstya, carries over between the two padas, which is somewhat hard to follow. So the amended text is easier. Draṣṭā nāstya a-tiras-kṛtya, a-tiras-kṛtya ca darśanam.
तिरस्कृत्य द्रष्टनास्त्य तिरस्कृत्य च दर्शनम् द्रष्टव्यं दर्शनं चैव द्रष्टर्यसति ते कुतः।